Hey everyone, welcome fellow developers, entrepreneurs, and even a gentleman who traveled all the way from the countryside of Offenburg. Nice to see you all here, and I'm really great to have this out. And today we are going to talk a little bit more about one of the most interesting topics that we kind of tackled in SumUp about the single activity architecture. And I hope you kind of had a good lunch, maybe a good coffee as well. And something which I always love to have in conferences is stable Wi-Fi. And so far, they seem to be doing good. This is Mani, an Android developer, well, a technical lead working for SumUp from past 3 years, and overall in the industry from past 1,200 years. No, I'm just saying 12 years. So yeah, you can call me, people call me Money, like literally money. And coincidentally, I work for a bank. I think my parents took my name really seriously, or it's a coincidence. And today we are going to talk about something not only about money, something more important than that. It's about how we took care of SumUp app, one of the apps like that we kind of handle in my organization. So just to give a quick brief of what SumUp is, maybe some of you people might have heard about it, or maybe not. And SumUp is a carton laser, like a card reader. You might be seeing it for small businesses, like a small white thing that you get to see, as you can see on the screen, and where kind of small businesses or anyone can kind of accept payments. And it can have everything. It has like point of sale systems. We also offer invoicing, most importantly, banking. I'm going to tap a little bit more about it. And we kind of provide a full ecosystem for any business who wants to accept payments. And we, or especially I, work for the bank part of it. Bank means basically transfers, the money that you kind of get into the account. You could transfer it into your personal account, or you can have cards, you can perform taxing, multiple stuff. So that's something we call it, and we call it global bank because SumUp is not only in EU, it's in UK, in Brazil, Chile. It's kind of expanding, so we call it like a global bank team. And we are multiple teams. We have online stores. People can sell their products online. We offer those solutions for them, including the POS and invoicing, banking, and everything that I'm talking about. And as I kind of just explained, in the context of Android, it's kind of a monolith. So you have a big repository, and multiple teams are working on the same repository in their individual modules. So this is like a quick brief of how SumUp is and how we kind of set out. So what's up for you? Like, you're not here to hear more about SumUp, but what is it like you're doing? So in this session, I'm going to explain about, I'm going to take you all through an interesting journey that I've gone through on single activity architecture. This is not a new concept, I'm sure. Pretty much some of you guys might have heard about it. And the most important thing we're going to do is why we kind of, in SumUp, we kind of migrated to single activity architecture. Like what made us drive into that decision, some of the things. And most of the times, like we all want to drive change in the organization, but we also want to understand about how do we kind of deal with different people, different stakeholders, and how do we decide on improving these kind of tech debts or and the communication side of it. And when we are kind of going through this journey, what are all the choices, the roadblocks that we kind of face through. And these are the things that we are going to talk a little bit about. Not a lot, not too less, something you can carry up with you at the end of the day. Of course, we're going to go a little bit technical, and something that you kind of use it in your app, in your organization when you're working, when you want to drive changes, or maybe do single activity architecture. So the story goes back 3 years when I kind of first joined SumUp. As you all know, or for me personally, like the first few months is like you call it honeymoon period. You kind of enjoy new people, new colleagues, nice kitchen, hopefully you get more salary as well. So you kind of enjoy the first few months, and I'm kind of doing the same thing. when the features are small, you're not being given super big features. And then, as the days goes by, the reality comes into picture, right? You're being asked to implement a feature. Then comes the feature, like I open the app, I've been asked to do some small change in the app, like, okay, user needs to be able to order a new card, for example. Then I open the app, click the button. You can see that just a quick view of how our app looks like, a quick video. Click the button, comes an activity, overview page, clicks the transaction detail activity, and then you click another button, send money, another activity, authentication activity, and then you click more activity, card details activity, literally card settings activity. No matter what you do, every button you click in the whole app, feature activity. I think I was like, okay, it's like the more you keep going, the more activities that keeps coming up. And it was, for me, someone who kind of course, not all organizations have a super great code, but then given the concept of single activity being one of the most important stuff people do, I was amazed to see that we have, well, I actually have counted the number of activities that I have, and it was 60 plus activities. So it's like a spaghetti of activities that we have to face through, I have to go through. And then it's all in a single module. That means you need to kind of look through any navigation that you need to do. And at the end of the flow, imagine, you're being asked to implement a feature. You started from activity 1, activity 2. Imagine you went to activity number 10. Something happened, success. User can also cancel the flow. It could be success, or you are in a waiting stage, and you want that data to be propagated to your overview page, because in activity 1, you want to refresh something, show some confirmation page. And then you have on-activity result, on-activity result, on-activity result, and you have like a mess of 15 on-activity results. And sometimes it's not even possible to even propagate those data. And that is what kind of made me really annoyed. Like, I was like thinking, how, as you get to see, you can see like I just kind of put down all the activities that we have, just in a mirror board, just we get a context of how it is. And it was like more. In Brazil, we have more. In Chile, I didn't even add Chile. Chile has more. And then in EU, we do have some more. So what did I do? Like, I mean, as every of you would do, I think I would be like, no one in their sane state of mind would write a code like this. That was my first impression. And no wonder why I've been hired into this organization. Maybe I need to clean this mess. And I've been complaining, actually speaking, and I was there for 6 months. Naturally, you'll be a little bit frustrated. People test my patience. And, but then there was a saying, after 6 months, you cannot complain anymore. You cannot just say that, oh, this is written by someone, you know, like the previous engineer has done it. It's you have started it, you already worked on it. If you're not gonna change, then it is your code, because you have to work on it. So what's the solution? And I really love this. I always do this. You know, I get a problem, I just run away, vanish, and just predict that, okay, things are fine. But actually not. And I don't think like shifting from frustration, that's a mindset that you need to change, right? So rather than being frustrated all the time, so I shifted my mindset into ownership. It's kind of ownership mindset. How could I own this code? What could I do to make sure that the next developer is not going to curse me as much as I kind of cursed the previous one? So the first question comes down to is, why do I need to do this change? You have 60 plus activities. Why do you even need to do the change? If it is working all these last 10 years, it can work for the next 10 years, right? This is something classic which I always hear from many people. If it is working, don't change it. Yes, you don't need to. But I do have some reasons. First, I need to be clear about why we need to do it. Sharing data across different activities has been a pain point. Because if you want to change, as you all know, sharing data between 2 screens with multiple activities, you could do by intent, like you create a bundle, it has to be then parcelable, you pass this parcelable into the other activity, and I don't know whether you are aware of it, it's called as, you have a limit in Android system that you can't pass more than 2 megabytes of data in a single. It's called as transaction too large exception. And most of the times you get it in shopping applications and stuff. And sharing the data has been a pain point. It's not easy. Then on top of it, you need to make it parcelable, then serializable, then you add a patch on top. And generally, how we all see activities, they are entry points to the system. It's part of the framework. So they actually allow users to do some changes. But that should not define the architecture of your application. An entry point should not define the whole architecture of your app. It could be today the entry point is an activity. It could be tomorrow something else. So that the moment we make the architecture based on the activities, then we are all trying to navigate through this flow. And that has become a painful job. And deep links, I think all of you would love it. And that is being a problem, because then imagine I create a deep link for some other screen, activity number 10. You click on a deep link, you directly go to deep link 10, which is like activity 10. The moment you click back button, what would happen? You just exit the app. Rather, the realistic navigation flow should be user has to go back to activity 9, 8, 7, which is the logical navigation steps. So that's not possible. Also, we have been kind of come up with some restrictions because we want to kind of implement features like this. As you get to see in one of the screens, in this screen, you have button tabs. So you have 5 different screens. How is it possible that I can have my account tab if it is an activity? Because it has to be a fragment. It has to be embedded in the main scope of screens. So naturally, that kind of made us grapple, or we don't have any other way than to make sure like we kind of get into a smaller activity structure. Like that's when we need to first make sure like our dashboard, which is the bank overview page that you get to see, it has to be a fragment. That is how you could put it in the grand scheme of things as part of bottom tabs. And then as you can see again in our bank screen, you have 4 tabs in the top, secondary navigation. So literally, all of the fragments, all of the activities that we have cannot exist like this because they have to be fragments. And this is what made us kind of make this plan of moving into single activity architecture. So it's a tech debt, right? So something has been written, you want to fix it. You're not delivering a new feature, you're actually changing some changes, performing some changes on the code base. So how do you kind of address this tech debt? So every time, in every code, wherever we go, I think you would also face it, that you want to do 100 different changes. Every code base has a problem. You always want to make it better. You want to refactor. You have a new library coming in. But generally, we kind of want to make sure, and generally what we do is, since I work for a bank, there was kind of a formula that we kind of follow, which is like how to address a tech debt, and if it falls through this kind of a formula, we generally try to kind of prioritize it. So what is this formula? It's basically about how you lend money from a bank. So let's take tech debt. A tech debt basically means, imagine tech debt is a loan that you take from a bank. So every time you take a loan from a bank, what do? You take a loan with some interest, right? And with whatever you take, the principal, you pay some interest to the bank. And with that money, you make some profits. So just see that as the same thing. So your code is the principal that you're taking. And if there is any tech debt, that is the interest that you're being paying. So now, if a tech debt is overweighing the feature deliverables, that means if it is kind of taking a lot of time for you to deliver a feature with an existing tech debt, then naturally you're making less profit by giving more interest, because then the tech debt is actually stopping you to make profit. So imagine you kind of an interest, like basically this tech debt is stopping you to deliver a feature which could be delivered in 2 months. It is making you to kind of deliver in 6 months. So if you see that in the grand scheme of things, you're actually paying more interest than profit, which doesn't make sense. It is rather better for you to pay off your principal, which is exactly what we do. We pay off our technical debt. So simple formula, feature delivery, and the returns. So what is the strategy that we kind of followed to make sure the single activity architecture is being handled is the chain of pearls. So this is something, the code word that we kind of used, because if you get to see, this is kind of our previous structure of how our activities are structured and their navigation. You can see like there is a main activity for Europe, European activity, for Brazil, Brazilian, Chile activity, then Chile has some n number of features, and each flow has its own sub-features, like cards has its cards flow, transfers flow. I just made it super simple, but trust me, there is a lot more here. I just try to make it a little bit more easier. So first we have this kind of flowchart. This is how it is. So the chain of pearls, the merging strategy, what we want to do is, we don't want to do a big bang migration in the top. Rather, we want to first handle the low-hanging fruits, which is the screens in the last. It's like a tree, and you want to kind of handle the nodes. So kind of merge each of the smaller nodes, like as you get to see, for example, card lifecycle. So card lifecycle, card intro, card type, selection, verification, confirm. It's kind of a flow, right? So what we try to do is we merged all of this into one navigation graph. And that point in time, we have navigation graphs. So we kind of merged all of those things into single navigation graph. So what happened is like now these 6 things became one. And they're all logically connected together. So we try to make it one. And likewise, for transfers flow, we kind of made it into one. So then all of these big things, we first started to make it like small, small steps to make sure like we're not touching the main part. First, try those smaller steps. And we ended up making sure that we kind of made all of these big things into navigation graphs. So you can really see here that we ended up having from 60, we kind of came close to 12. I would say 12 to 13, I would say. And you can see like we have card management, card setting, the life cycle. So every flow that we have, we try to make it into a navigation graph. But then, the moment we reached 12, we reached a dead end actually. We could not make it lesser than 12. Why? Why? Because we have screens, we have a flow which would be started from another flow. So if you kind of put both of this navigation things on the same page, you could use nested navigation graphs, but it has its own challenges. I would explain later. But we could not kind of create two different, you cannot merge these two things into the same activity. So this is when we actually introduce something called as a sub-navigation activity. So sub-navigation activity is kind of a generic activity that we created. It is not tied to anything. Its job, it's like a platform screen. It's kind of a holder. All it accepts is the navigation graph ID that you wanted to load, any of the start arguments, the arguments that you wanted to kind of start that. Maybe sometimes you want to give it some start arguments to load the screen, or for the first fragment, maybe. And if you want to do any deep linking, maybe sometimes you want to navigate a flow, you want to start the screen, and then you want to directly deep link to a specific page in the graph. So that is exactly what this navigation activity does. It's pretty generic. It just accepts these 3 IDs, and it does its own job of how to load all of these changes. And now, as you can see, like now, from 12, we removed all of those things, and we made them sub-navigation activities. So all of them are like navigation graphs, setting them into nested, wherever we could make like nested nav graphs. And this is kind of a code, like you could see like how we kind of made it, pretty much generic. Any screen can be launched using the sub-navigation activity. Just to let you know, you can open a sub-navigation activity from one sub-navigation activity. So it could be that you started a flow 1, and from flow 1, you wanted to launch another flow 2. Rather than creating another activity, we created an instance of the same activity. But at the end, you are just making everything generic, that you just make sure like you're handling with one activity. So you can see like we have the arguments, which takes the nav graph ID, and the deep links, and pretty much all of this stuff. So everything is made generic. Like as you can see, we built the nav graph dynamically, and things started to actually work a lot. And the point was when we were implementing this nav graphs into sub-navigation activity flows, we kind of stumbled into a situation where we also want to make sure like we are dividing them into small feature modules. Like you all know, right? You know, feature modules make things better. You have hot reload and everything. But then when you actually try to make things into feature modules, you could always end up in a situation where, for example, you have a dashboard module here, like the main module, and then you loaded settings. Settings, we created a separate module. But then it could happen that from settings module, you wanted to launch an activity or some flow which is there in the parent module. If you want to access another module, then you need to add it as a dependency. Then dashboard module will have settings module as a dependency. Settings module will have, again, dashboard module as a dependency, which causes cyclic dependencies issues. So we ended up in these situations where we really kind of tried to create feature modules, but then when we tried to kind of make navigations which is not yet migrated, so we are still in the parent module, but we still want to make it, we can't wait until that dependent code is being migrated, right? Then we are stopping everything. So how to handle this without ending up in cyclic dependencies? So what we kind of did is we created something called as a shared module, which is where the interface lies in. So we kind of created interface. Interfaces always stay in this shared module, and all of the feature modules have the shared module as a dependency, and then the actual implementation is there in the main module, which is kind of a reverse dependency injection. You might think like it's a hack, but it is actually possible. You can do it. It kind of worked for us, wherein you have the interface in the child module and the implementation in your parent module, and when Hill builds it, Hill can understand that, okay, the implementation is there, and it would start working without the need for you to end up having cyclic dependencies issues during your build. This is something cool we kind of found as part of it. So the life is good, 3 months, 4 months, we are kind of doing the changes step by step. You know, modules are being created, and then and our team is also growing. We have really great engineers joining in, and they are bringing new ideas. And then I naturally ask the question, hey, why do you guys don't even have Compose? Jetpack Compose is pretty real, right? What is it like you guys are using XML? Are you guys are really living up to the name of working for a bank? You don't change any code. But we are actually changing a lot. So what should we do? And that is when one of the patches that we could do for Compose is you could create a composable, embed it in a fragment, and then make a XML, and then make it work with sub-navigation activity. Because sub-navigation activity only accepts navgraph IDs. It can't do more, right? So what we did is that's a patch over a patch over a patch. Then we are ending up into the previous situation. So then what we did is we created another version, like composable sub-navigation activity. So whomever wanted to write everything in Compose, they can actually create their own navigation graphs, like dynamic nav graphs. I think you all know about the contract on the API of how composable works. So you can have a nav host controllers. And what we did is we just introduced them, we gave them a composable version of sub-navigation activity, and all they do is the same thing. They can just get an intent, you pass the graph factory, the type of the navigation flow that you're working on, and if you want to have activity results in case, you could pass it, and boom, our sub-navigation activity could take care of everything. So basically, we ended up being 2 activities because the main activity is one, sub-navigation activity we introduced as the second one, and then we added a composable sub-navigation, so activity number 3. Naturally, our plan is to sunset the sub-navigation activity, but again, the decision comes down to how we handle tech debts. Is it really causing the interest versus profit? So for now, we kind of yeah, whomever wants to refactor the code, write it in compose, and then you remove it. And at some point, we remove the code. So the composable subnavigation activity is how we kind of do it. We created a graph factory kind of thing. So we want to make sure like the way how we implemented subnavigation, composable subnavigation is much more decoupled. The code is spread across multiple modules, so you don't need to worry about tightly coupling your changes. As you can see here, we created an interface called as graph factory, and the implementation of the graph factory is specific to every module. So if I'm creating a settings module, I create a settings graph factory, and you implement your code. The moment we kind of inject it into health, you can see like we provide into health, and then naturally it automatically finds in runtime, the moment you give the type of the subnavigation, health finds the specific graph factory for it, and then it kind of renders it. So it kind of started working, and boom, and we ended up in having only 3 activities: main activity and subnavigation, the legacy version we want to remove, and then the composable. And the result is this. Yeah, now my account balance increased to 10,000 euros. Well, that's not my real account, even though I wish it's mine. And the whole flow, it's the same. It's a sub-navigation activity. And someone created a composable version. So we launched a composable sub-navigation. And pretty much things are started to work seamlessly. Activity result has not become a problem. And pretty much it's kind of smoother. And that is how we kind of finally ended up creating a feature handling the stack debt. So everything is great, right? But, well, not. The outcomes were great, but we also have our fair share of problems, some of the learnings that we kind of got. And the biggest thing, mostly with this kind of navigation stuff, is the back button navigation, right? Whenever you want to click back button, you want to make sure like it always pops to the previous version. But what's something which I found really interesting is this scenario. Imagine you have fragments. You launch fragment A, and you always have this flag called as pop-up to inclusive. That means when you want to launch another fragment from the current fragment, without having the current fragment in the backstack, you can put this flag. And our expectation is, imagine you went from fragment A to B with pop-up inclusion to true. That means fragment A should be out of the backstack. You went to fragment C and D. From D, when you navigate up, pop backstack, you come back to fragment C. Then you pop backstack, you come to fragment B. Then you click back button, pop backstack. The expectation is the stack is empty. It should actually finish the activity because we created navigate up or finish, which means if you don't see anything in the stack, you just finish the activity, which is like a generic code. Our sub-navigation should not be tied to a specific logic. It has to be pretty generic. What happened for us is it crashed the application. But why? This is pretty interesting for us. I couldn't even realize why it crashed our application. If you look at the code, we kind of dig deeper into how navigation controller works. So when you look at the code, the way we wrote it is like navigate up or finish. If it can, the navigation controller has an API, navigate up, it returns a Boolean. If it can navigate up, it just gives you true. Yes, then it pop backstack. If it is not, then we finish the current activity. And we went into the navigate up. As you can see here, it kind of checks whether the stack has only 1. Ideally, if your stack is only 1, this is the last one in the screen. It should just finish. But what has happened, for me, I still can't understand the logic behind it. Maybe some Googlers can explain. If you're in the last part of the screen, it actually checks whether you launched with a deep link. As you can see, if it is not null, so that means you have a deep link inside, it tries to relaunch the activity. I don't understand why. Maybe there is some magic behind, but for us, we have no reason. And another thing that made it surprising is it relaunches the activity, but it does not give all the all the arguments, bundles that we kind of provided. You see the navigation graph ID, the start arguments, the deep links, nothing. None of this is propagated. And the result is actually that app got crashed. Since when we start our sub-navigation activity, we always expect the navigation ID to be passed, so which graph we should load. And we don't have that when Android system is relaunching and it does not have this graph ID. So this is kind of a surprise for it, and what we kind of made it is a simple plain version of overriding the navigate up in our activity. Fortunately, given that we don't have 60 activities, it's only a single activity, we wrote it only at single place. So all we did is, when you try to navigate up, if the nav controller does not have anything in the backstack, we just finished it ourselves. So this is one change that we need to do. However, the outcomes of it, at the end of the day, by doing this change, has been, deep links have become super easy. We really don't need to worry about how do you handle the backstack. When you click back button, they should go, or none of these changes have become a worry for us. It's like pretty straightforward. Also, sharing of data across screens. Earlier, it used to be always needs to be with parcelables and serializables, but now we can always use the power of the shared view models, which is something we kind of tried and it kind of worked. In case of navigation graphs, you can scope your view model by the nav graph ID. So every screen or every fragment which is scoped in that nav graph can use the same instance of view model. And in case of composables, you can still use the same view model which is scoped with the backstack entry. So this made sure like we are having the same activity, the same instance of a view model. So and we can share the data across. And the beauty of it is, and the other benefit that we got is the speed of delivery. Given that now every team is not concentrated on how to handle all of these back navigations or multiple screens and activities, the speed of delivery with all of the teams, they kind of improved because we were able to unlock the benefit of multiple modules, multiple feature modules, which means the incremental compilation came into play. So the builds have got much faster, and teams are able to actually ship the code even faster. So that made life much more easier, and the developer experience, which is the most important metric in any team. If your developer itself is not, if your developer's experience itself is not good, then how will the experience of the customer be? So, which is a direct implication. And the stability of the code is improved since now we have a single source of truth. No more searching across multiple places how navigation is handled, how the back button is handled. We don't need to worry about it. And the features like multiple screens or multiple screens, split screens feature, or even multi-window, multi-modular applications, which used to be a distant dream when we started with 60 activities, now it became kind of a reality. And those are the things that we kind of automatically started benefiting from, which kind of improved it. So the key takeaways for us by doing this kind of tech debt is doing changes step by step. So which is something we kind of learned as part of it. So imagine you cannot change the engine in the mid-flight, right? You cannot change the airplane engine in the mid-flight. It just gets catastrophic. You need to do changes step by step, minimal, without having to have this kind of big bang migrations, which is something which made our life easier. Just to let you know how long it took for us to do this 60 activities to one, it was close to a year. It took us 1 year to do it. But the point was, we don't want to change the world overnight. We actually want to make sure that the changes that we are doing are smaller, incremental. Every change that you're doing, you are able to see the changes coming up. And that is something we don't want to break things in the way. So that is why this is one of the learnings that we found, that anytime we are trying to do any changes or tech debt, try to make sure like those are incremental and not big bang theory stuff. Overnight changes generally don't work. And communication. I don't think no one would deny this. Generally, in software teams, silence is deadly. So why I would say it is, it's always better when the engineers, the QAs, the product folks, everyone are informed about the change that is happening, what we are trying to fix, what is being launched, how is it going to change the feature. So when everyone is informed about how the things are going around, point number one is you get the support from the other people when something is breaking down, and you also have the support of others trying to explain when someone questions why these changes are happening. Well, no one complains having more clarity, right? It's always better to have more clarity than having no clarity. So the communication has become a key, especially when we are trying to perform this kind of big bang migrations. And through the way, it's not like something we initially tried through and things are becoming like exactly the same thing. We were able to adapt to the changes that are coming. As we get to see, we started with sub-navigation activity, then compose come into picture. So for the composables, we want to make sure we support in such a way. And now we have navigation 3 framework coming into picture. So having the mindset of adapting to the changes reduced the amount of frustrations that we got. So we were very clear to start when we are starting this thing, which is like 1 year, we know that we would be challenged. The moment we had this mindset of adaptability, that is when things changed. Because nothing goes perfectly as planned. We just need to kind of make sure that we were open to changes, change your course, adapt to how things are coming in, how things are flowing through. And that is something we always make sure like you expect it when you're performing these kind of changes. And the most important part, to make your experience of these kind of migrations or tech debts much more breezy, is to kind of automate. No one would like to change, no one would like to do a small change, just merge two activities, and then end up clicking 50 buttons to see whether your code is working fine. Or no one would really love to kind of run all the changes, the UI screens, the screenshot testing, all of this. So how do we make it easier is try to make sure you have automations, make sure like you have some unit tests written up front, especially for deep links, have some end-to-end tests. So the flows are already covered. So anytime you try to do changes, they were all, they could be run through the CI flows and you can confidently ship your feature. And these are one of the key takeaways, which I hope you could kind of use it in your tech debt handling. And having said that, any questions?